Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to this event, which is a joint session of the TV Festival and the network. And if you're wondering what that is, we're joined here at this session by 65 delegates from the network. It's an entry-level talent scheme. Here they are, dotted there throughout the audience. It's an entry-level talent scheme that helps young people and new talent who want to work in the TV industry to get the first steps towards a career in it. And it's funded by industry sponsorship and the cost of the delegate badges you had to pay to be here today, unless you're a journalist like me and you get in for free, if you're lucky. So thanks to you all for funding that brilliant thing, and welcome to the Network 65. I'm incredibly excited to be hosting this event. I can't think of any TV show I'd rather talk about for an hour with the people who make it and star in it. Sherlock started in summer 2010 with, I wouldn't say the biggest fanfare ever. It was brought forward in the schedule, and I'll talk about that with the creators in a minute. And since then, the 6 episodes have become an absolute international phenomenon. BBC Worldwide has sold the show to 234 territories, which is more territories than there are countries in the world. Each episode is seen by over 50 million people. It's won over 40 awards, including 7 BAFTAs, 2 Critics' Choices, a thing called a Peabody Award, which apparently is an incredibly important American award, and this year, 17 American Emmy nominations. That's the big primetime Emmys, and there'll be a big ceremony in New York, and they'll all be there later in the year. So, to remind you, as if you need reminding, of the brilliance of one of the best shows we've all seen ever, 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 here is some stuff from Sherlock.
How fresh?
Just in. 67 natural causes. Used to work here. I knew him. He was nice.
Fine. We'll start with the riding crop.
You'd want me for a flatmate.
You're the second person to say that to me today.
Who was the first?
The name's Sherlock Holmes and the address is 221B Baker Street.
Who are you? What do you do?
I'm a consulting detective.
What does that mean?
It means when the police are out of their depth, they consult me.
I'm breaking every rule letting you in here.
Yes, because you need me.
God help me.
The game, Mrs. Hudson, is on.
You wearing any pants?
No.
Okay.
Irene Adler, professionally known as the Woman.
This is how I want you to remember me. The woman who beat you.
You're rather good.
You're not so bad.
20-year-old disappearance. A monstrous hound. Wouldn't miss this for the world.
Sherlock, it was here.
Get it! Get back! Get away from me!
Every fairy tale needs a good old-fashioned villain.
Moriarty is playing with your mind too. Can't you see what's going on?
That's how you get your kicks, isn't it? Risking your life to prove you're clever.
Time to choose.
You're ordinary. You're on the side of the angels.
Oh, I may be on the side of the angels, but don't think for 1 second that I am one of them.
Thank you. So please welcome to the stage the people who put that together. Producer Sue Virtue, co-creator and writer Stephen Moffat, co-creator and Mycroft, Mark Gatiss, and Moriarty himself, Andrew Scott. We should start by saying maybe that Martin Freeman, in the programme it said Martin Freeman was going to be here, and he's not, due to various reasons. But this is, you people are equally as brilliant and exciting, obviously, as him. I just wanted to get that out of the way.
And them all to come because they thought they'd
Yeah.
He's in Afghanistan.
Yes.
13 Emmys, not 17. Oh, sorry, only 13.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a good start. I've completely lied about the number of Emmys
I know,
that you could possibly get. So I thought I'd start. I think a lot of people have heard the story of how you two, Mark and Steve, came up kind of on the train to Cardiff, working on Doctor Who together, and you kind of suddenly realised that you might be able to do something with your joint love of Sherlock Holmes. But what I want to kind of expand on that story is, when you were having those conversations, at what point did you kind of come up with the kind of people you wanted to be in it, and what kind of tone it was going to be, and how exactly you'd turn it into what it eventually became?
We talked about bringing back the Ghost of Motley Hall for 3 days, and then we moved on to Sherlock.
Well, it was immediately apparent, really, from the idea of bringing it into the present day, that we'd have to have a sort of, well, not really a checklist, but we'd just have to work through the stories that we knew and loved and work out a kind of modern equivalence.
I think critically, just realizing he could still be coming home from Afghanistan because we had the kindness to restage that hopeless war was critical for us, and the idea of the blog. But I don't think we got very, very real about it. We were just gossiping about what we thought someone should do. It wasn't until I mentioned to Sue specifically how cross Mark and I would be when somebody else did an updated Sherlock Holmes, because we should have done it. Right. Without any real sense of irony, and Sue said, well, you could. It was when we started.
It's a good job we don't work in television.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, because of the films, which are, the last couple of films which are being made, which were set in the period.
Yeah.
But so did anyone think that the BBC, or did you think, oh, is there going to be too much Sherlock? But no, let's do this modern updated version, and that's the way.
We didn't know at the time. I think at the time we were doing the pilot. Yeah. We heard about the making the film. So yes, that was slightly dodgy. We thought that there's going to be two Sherlocks, but it clearly hasn't done any damage at all. So.
And when you were, Sue, when you were first kind of formulating it, then and kind of thinking, okay, we can do this. Did you? What you ended up watching was a big, ambitious, bold thing. Was that always the idea from the start, that you wanted to do turn it into a big thing, or did you think maybe it could have started on a smaller scale?
We thought it was going to be smaller. I mean, we originally sold 2 60-minute commissions, didn't we? We both wrote scripts. And then we made the pilot. And I think we thought it was going to be a lovely piece that we'd all be very proud of, I think.
There was a lot. I think the success of Wallander in those 3 90-minute formats, I think, was an influence then as a decision that was a slot that was working, that we would then, and then it made a big difference in terms of the sort of scale of the stories that we were going to tell.
Because Ben phoned me and said, do you think you can do them as 90s rather than 60s? And I remember phoning you both up. You were both at Doctor Who together.
We were both at Doctor Who read-through, Matt's very, very first read-through, sort of prior to the proper run. And you phoned up and said, would you mind doing them as 90 minutes? If you say yes, it's a commission. So Mark and I just said, yeah, fine, absolutely, yeah. It was without a twinge of conscience or regret.
But you did make that 60-minute pilot.
Yeah, it exists. Right. It's on the DVD.
Yeah, it's on the DVD. And could you summarise what are the differences between, or the big differences between that pilot and the 90-minute?
Do you know, I don't know that. I mean, one of the big differences is that really, I suppose, that Paul McGuigan came in and gave it such visual style, and gave it such a distinctive visual language with all the floating text and all that. That is probably the biggest thing. Conceptually, it's the same show, because we were new at it, not quite as well done. I think when we first made that, we thought it was the best thing ever, and people who saw it thought it was terrific.
Yeah. But also, we put it into research, didn't we? Ben said, if you want to put it into research, then you can. And the commission wasn't reliant on it; it was just a useful tool. And there were certain things that came out of it, I think, one of which they really wanted Moriarty as well.
Yeah. So originally, you didn't plan to have Moriarty in the first series of episodes, is that right?
We didn't know that if he was one of the things that everybody knew about. In a way, when you do shows like this, you have to work out, because it's kind of public property, Sherlock Holmes, what does everybody know and expect? To our surprise, when we got the research, everyone said, well, where's Moriarty? Now, Mark and I, as tragic Sherlock Holmes geeks, then we'll pipe up and say, he was only in one story, which is fascinating. But they all wanted him. They wanted the arch enemy.
Yeah.
So we just thought, if we'd done 6 60s, we would have sort of eked it out more.
Yeah.
And as soon as we did 3 90s, he's behind Phil Davis's plot, essentially. He's the shadow from the beginning.
Yeah.
The crucial flaw in the pilot is that Mycroft isn't in it.
Right.
Of course. That's what all the audience research said.
Yeah, of course. Let's talk about the casting then. So at what point did you decide Martin and Benedict were going to be with a key? Did you have them in mind from the beginning when you started talking about it?
It's true. This isn't a showbiz story. There's only ever been one person considered for Sherlock Holmes in this part. We got Sue and I were watching Atonement, knowing we're looking for a Sherlock Holmes, and there was Benedict doing what he did in those days, playing the creepy villain, and we just thought, oh, he could be a Sherlock Holmes. We mentioned
also,
the Mark.
because I didn't know much at all about Sherlock Holmes, so you described to me the ideal, tall, thin, angular, big nose.
With an impressive nose, and sort of aristocratic. I mentioned that to Mark, who actually knew him, and he thought that was a good idea. We got Benedict in, taped him in Beryl's flat, and sent it to the BBC and said, look, there is really no point in carrying on.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the one.
I think there is that thing sometimes, I've said this before, but a bit like James Bond, sometimes there's about half a dozen candidates in the ether. Sometimes there's just a natural choice, and it was absolutely a natural choice.
And Martin?
But then it was actually a slightly longer, not terribly long, but a longer process to find a fit with Benedict. And we saw a lot of great people, but it was one of those things, as soon as they read together, the chemistry was obvious. And Steve turned to me and just said, there's the show. It's absolutely true. It just sort of sprang into life. Plus, he's short enough.
Yeah.
He read with
He's not here.
3, was it?
We cast Martin because he made Benedict look impressive by being
And what about Andrew? How did you find Andrew?
Well, this is actually quite fun because originally in Mark's The Great Game, the big gag was we never saw Moriarty. We just saw Moriarty in the guise of Gay Jim, as we called him. And at the end of the script, there'd just be a message that would, and Sherlock would realise, damn it, that was Moriarty all along. But we had to audition someone to play Moriarty without ever having written a scene for him. So we rustled up a ridiculous scene. A really ridiculous scene, which you sort of think, if anyone could play this, with ridiculous lines like, I will burn the heart out of you, to see if anyone could actually play this. And then we saw Andrew gave this blistering performance. And not only did we cast him, we thought, we've got to put this nonsensical scene into it.
So Andrew, your performance is extraordinary, very big, and and I think when people first saw it, people were almost shocked by how kind of big you were. But was that a thing you thought right from the start? You saw the script, you offered them, you thought, this is how I'm going to go with this?
Not overly consciously. I think, I was very aware that I wouldn't necessarily be the first person that people would think of as Moriarty. So I think there's the job at the end of the first series was to sort of serve the script. There was this fantastic build-up to him. So I think it was important that because I wouldn't be obvious casting, that you don't do an obvious copycat version of someone else's villain. So I think, I wanted it to be maybe audacious, and it was written very audaciously and quite theatrically. But looking back on it now, I do understand. I do see that people thought, what the fuck is this?
Because I guess it's kind of, there was an incredible combination between building, as you said, the build-up, and that people might be expecting with all due respect, a really famous person to be in that role, and then now you are incredibly famous because you made the role your own. But for someone we might not have seen to be doing such a huge thing seemed to work incredibly, didn't it?
I was talking to Andrew about this on the train coming up. That it's a bit like Lecter. Hannibal Lecter is on screen in Silence of the Lambs for about 16 minutes. Yeah. He's talked about throughout, and then his actual impact, as with Andrew, it's incredible. It's really essentially 2 large scenes that have made all this impact, but it's all down to Andrew's skill.
Well, Sandra, you became famous on the basis of having been in the last few minutes of Sherlock. Yeah. You actually stole the show by being at the end of it, which was fantastic. Did you kind of realise that might happen? Did you, or was it kind of all come of a shock that
no? What was very strange. Well, I was absolutely terrified because I, for some reason, I hadn't seen it. I don't know why. So I watched it. I watched it grow. I watched the first episode, and I thought, God, this is fantastic. And there was this huge fanfare to it, and people sort of immediately, which I think is extraordinary about Sherlock, is that and very hard to do, is that people had an immediate affection for it. I think a show can be very popular and very, critically very well received, but I think to have an affection for a show so early on is really extraordinary. So that was really wonderful, but also made me absolutely terrified. So I was watching it, going, Jesus. Don't mess this up, at the end I was terrified. And then, one doesn't watch oneself on screen and think, that is just brilliant. You think, you hate it, you absolutely...
And did you go online as well?
Well, it's, in one way, it was the greatest lesson I ever had. I looked online. And I read some of the most unforgettable things.
Where did you go online? So did you go to like Twitter or did you
Yeah,
go to...
I looked at Twitter.
Yeah.
I'd never done Twitter. Stupidly, and so I always say about Twitter that it's like going into a room and being punched and then kissed and then hugged and then complimented and then someone saying, I really like your tie, and slap you across the face. And then they push you out of the room and you think,
Yeah.
And so the answer is don't go in the room.
Right.
Andrew rang me up the next day from the top of Bart's Hospital.
Yeah, I thought this is the end for me.
Were you guys surprised by the reaction to Andrew?
It was already, I think, our favourite scene, wasn't it? I think when it was shot very, very early on in the first run, and I watched that scene hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Just loved it
I mean,
so much. So we knew what he would do. Yeah.
Right.
We made a decision that he wouldn't be. Moriarty in the book, in the story, is a grave professorial man.
Yeah.
His shoulders stooped through much study and all these things, and we knew we weren't going to do that. Just as with lots of the equivalences in the rest of the other characters, you have to find a new way to do it. As Steve often says, Moriarty is the first supervillain, and therefore has become the pattern, and therefore, like all these things, has become a bit of a cliche. So we knew we had to go somewhere else. And Andrew just brought something so totally different and extremely dangerous. That's the brilliant thing. That you just never know where you are with him. And that sort of sense that you might think you're having a charming conversation, and then he'll just slit your throat, just for fun.
Or his own throat, which is the reason he thought that'd be fun.
But
imagine it from Andrew's point of view, though.
Yeah.
He's watching this instant hit show, like all of us, and we're all thinking, this is amazing. I've never seen a show hit so big, so quickly. We're exalted. There's one person who isn't exalted because he hasn't come on yet. He's not coming on to the last 5 minutes.
That's weird.
The whole show is riding on with he walks through the door and his face.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to that clip later. But first, I do want to go back and look at kind of how you actually put it together. And I think if we look at this clip, which is from Baskerville, which you wrote, Mark, I just want to talk about the difference between what you wrote on the script and how it gets put on the screen by the director, by Paul McGuigan, who directed it. So let's have a look at this.
Hello?
So lots of interesting things about that. First of all, there are hardly any words, and visually incredibly powerful and kind of thrilling, scary scene. To what extent is that? Is that stuff on the page that you've come up with, and to what extent is it? And in general, I guess, in terms of Sherlock.
Actually, it's an interesting example of that because it started life in a totally different way. I knew I wanted to write a suspense sequence, and in horror film parlance, it's a Val Lewton technique, a sustained suspense sequence like that. It was going to be inside a refrigerated space, like a meat locker. We actually wrecked them. And because I thought I'd never seen that before. Actually, that's a new thing, and the idea of sort of the breath and this possible creature in there. Then we couldn't do it for various reasons. It was going to be in the other lab, with the orange lab, and it was very small. There wasn't really enough. And then we decided. Paul said, "Why don't we just do it in the big one?" And I actually sat there in that room and rewrote it to suit everything that was there. And then Paul also had this great idea that we should start it in light. That the last thing everyone's going to expect the lights to go off, but what if he comes out and there's like a sort of sensory overload, really, which is what you get there. So there's actually a sustained bit of kind of unbearable noise and light before the lights go, and then it starts to build from there. So it was a kind of, as a sequence, all the beats are the same. It just actually became geographically different.
There was another sequence, the one with the security light at the window, which was very, very precisely plotted at script lab. I remember reading it on the train and thinking it was just fantastic. But it was an entirely visual sequence, but it was meticulously plotted through and written down.
And did you when you were formulating it from the start, did you have these incredibly ambitious the ideas of how to do the mind palaces and how Sherlock is when he's interrogating people? Was that all there from the start? That those kind of very exciting, quick edited sequences, was that a thing? Yeah, well, let's kind of make this as kind of rich and visually exciting as possible. Was that something that was brought in by the director?
Well, I mean, we had all kinds of ambitions, but I mean, for instance, the text on screen thing, which became an immediately big idea, came in a sort of back to front way, didn't it? From
yeah, because I'd seen, because I was still writing A Study in Pink while we were shooting the Great Game, and Paul had told me he was going to have text floating on screen, which I thought sounded awful. But I happened to be walking past the cutting room and saw it, and I thought, well, that looks quite cool. So I then wrote it in a different way with all the clues in around the pink body. So by the time we've got to that sequence with the Mind Palace, everyone is now chipping. Like Charlie did a lot of that, didn't he? He was with the face stuck on Sherlock's face and all that.
And it's true, actually, because it's meant to be a sequence where he delves deep into something. But actually, everyone, I suppose, was emboldened by the success of the text thing to think, well, we can do something else here. So, I mean, Benedict put in the Elvis, the actual impression. He was just supposed to sort of go past his head. Right. And then you get an actual face, and you get the face of John Philip Sousa and stuff like that. And it was just fun, really.
I mean, I think those are a real combination of where the director and the editor work together so perfectly. I mean, they just play it. This is stunning what they do.
But both Paul and Charlie Phillips did it. They're incredibly playful. So whatever we put in the script, we know by the time it comes back to us, it will be much more elaborate. Yeah. And we're always throwing out new ideas. But once it's established as a baseline that we do things like that, then you can do much more with it. Like in Scandal, the plane on the wall that flies off and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
But also the Scandal one with the bed in the field and everything. You wrote also because you knew that Paul would love.
Yeah, I always try and write sort of groovy transitions for Paul, but he always comes up with something better.
That transition is brilliant.
Yeah, well, when I didn't write that. That was I wrote something else that was meant to be clever, but he came up with the idea of just the bed rising up behind Benedict and him turning around and going to sleep. Which, if you said that in words, I think would sound awful. Again. Yeah. But it was just one of those standout moments.
The strangest part is standing in a field in the middle of Wales with a pneumatic bed.
Yes. Because he likes to do as much in camera as possible.
Yeah. So to avoid CGI, to have actual proper
around with
physical
walls and beds and sofas.
And where was that filmed? That bit?
That was all. That was in Wales, up in Beacons. So we shoot most of it in Wales.
And once you'd seen the first series and what had been done, and what was it all finished and went out, did you then feel for the second series that we can go even bigger and better and bolder?
Yeah, but I think you just do that rather than make a decision about it. You can't help it. Nothing else. It is, applause is emboldening.
Yeah.
If people laugh at your jokes, you make more. So we got excited by it rather than decided about it.
We always talk about, which is not deferring pleasure. I suppose that if we'd done 660s and we'd eked out the notion of Moriarty and stuff like that, but they became big stories. Therefore, we had a conversation. It was like, well, maybe we need to get to Reichenbach by a third series and stuff like that. And then it was like, well, why don't we just do the three most famous ones right now? Yeah. And that's immediately the second series just formed in that way. It was like, let's do
more now sooner was the idea. So don't make them wait. Just now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and when you are deciding which stories to do, between you, how is it? How do you sort out who's going to write which? Is there a kind of, is there a competitive? Did you want to write basketball?
We have a fist fight.
Yes.
Well, it was a funny one actually
because dinner a lot.
I go to dinner a lot, and it's usually just growing enthusiasm from someone. The funny one was that was Hounds actually, because we decided to give that away. We decided to farm it out, but every time
the subject of Hound of the Baskervilles came up, Mark's face lit up. And I just thought, he's meant to do this, surely.
If I only knew what a
Yeah,
bitch
not when he
he was
finished
going to
writing
be.
it.
And he then opened the book and realised none of it makes any sense at all.
Was that the hardest one to do? Because that is A, the most famous, but B, kind of, if you
It's
did
very
it...
hard. It's an intractable story because at the end it's just a big dog with paint on it.
Yeah.
And in order not to do that, it's almost impossible. I mean, we definitely tried our best.
But also, we kept going through the book. I remember when Mark was stuck, I was reading it too, and I was thinking, hey, why does anybody do any of this? He's trying to kill somebody, so he gets a giant dog. Why?
Yes.
Also, because I actually don't know the stories that well. I'm the one that hasn't read them all, and so quite often I'd say to you two, but why would that happen? They go, shh. But from the
Because
original,
it's Sherlock
from the original
Holmes.
stories, yeah.
Well, let's have a look at a scene from the first episode of the second series, which I mean, we all loved the first series, but then this episode arrived, and I think it did kind of knock everyone for six. Is that a phrase even? Just how incredibly exciting it really was, and we'll see what I mean from this clip.
The dominatrix who brought a nation to its knees. Nicely played.
No.
Sorry?
I said no. Very, very close, but no. You got carried away. The game was too elaborate. You're enjoying yourself too much.
No such thing as too much.
Oh, enjoying the thrill of the chase is fine. Craving the distraction of the game, I sympathize entirely, but sentiment. Sentiment is a chemical defect found in the losing side.
Sentiment? What are you talking about?
You.
Oh, dear God. Look at the poor man. You don't actually think I was interested in you. Why? Because you're the great Sherlock Holmes, the clever detective in the funny hat?
No. Because I took your pulse. Elevated. Your pupils dilated. I imagine John Watson thinks love's a mystery to me, but the chemistry is incredibly simple and very distractive. When we first met, you told me that disguise is always a self-portrait. How true of you. The combination to your safe, your measurements. But this is far more intimate. This is your heart, and you should never let it rule your head. You could have chosen any random number and walked out of here today with everything you've worked for. But you just couldn't resist it, could you? I've always assumed that love is a dangerous disadvantage. Thank you for the final proof.
Everything I said, it's not real. I was just playing the game.
I know. And this is just losing. There you are, brother. Hope the contents make up for any inconvenience I may have caused you tonight.
I'm certain they will.
If you're feeling kind, lock her up. Otherwise, let her go. I doubt she'll survive long without her protection.
Are you expecting me to beg?
Yes?
Please. You're right. I won't even last 6 months.
Sorry about dinner.
Oh, he likes her, really, you can tell.
No, that ended up, first of all, Lara Pulver. Again, the casting, incredible. How many people did you have to look at first, or did Lara kind of
Jeanette
arrive?
Cranky said no.
She'd have been good.
She sent,
she
sent a tape.
It was a funny one. I mean, we saw a lot of people, and they were all brilliant, because we've got Kate Rhodes-James, who's a brilliant casting director. But the key to this one was what you said, was that Lara was fun. Because Irene Adler, as we portray her, is quite awful. If you look at what she actually does in that, she's terrible.
Yeah.
But you have to be charmed by her. And she brought such a sense of fun to it. And the ability to cry like that.
She also made everyone sit up because she sent a tape from LA and she didn't have any clothes on. Well, certainly from there upwards.
Yeah.
And we hadn't seen anyone do that before.
No,
Just
So she's in a naked audition.
Well, it wasn't really naked. I'm sure she was wearing a towel or something.
And there's so many things to ask about that episode. Interesting, there was, if you looked at...
It's all right. Here we go. It's all right. No, I'm a homosexual. It's allowed.
Exactly. It's interesting because there was a lot of debate, so many things to debate about that episode. I mean, it's interesting how the power that one 90-minute TV program could have. But people were talking about, should Irene Adler have been in love with him? People got annoyed, didn't they? And people were so invested in this episode.
Yeah.
How did you kind of react to that? Were you kind of surprised by that level of people were angry, thrilled, excited, overwhelmed? Blah, blah, blah.
Well, that's the mark of a show that's making a mark, isn't it? That's a good thing. Well, we sort of knew that Irene Adler was the dangerous one because everyone's very, very... people get sort of cross about whether or not Sherlock Holmes is in love. Now, you can't really tell from that whether he is or not. He's certainly fascinated by her, and she's certainly fascinated by him. There is a long-standing tradition in the movies of Sherlock Holmes falling in love with sort of falling in whatever counts for love for him with the femme fatale. It's beautifully done in The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, which is our favourite movie. And you must all go and see immediately. If you love Sherlock, you will love that. And yes, we sort of knew that giving Sherlock a girlfriend, sort of, kind of, would get a number of people really, really cross. Yeah, we got that.
Yeah. You've got two shows now which have become, Doctor Who and Sherlock, kind of like people are obsessed with these things. There's a level of obsession, isn't there? So you're now...
I had noticed.
Yeah. That must be incredible that you've got two things that everyone is completely...
Yes. Could get cross with you about.
Yes.
Gets really cross with you about.
Yeah.
I guess, but equally thrilled at the same time. Did you think this one would be like... Because obviously you've been working on Doctor already. Did you all think it would turn from being... As you said, when it first started, without that much fanfare, as I said, it was brought forward in the schedule, wasn't it? It was started in the summer. It could have been a nice thing.
We thought it would be good.
It's become a phenomenon.
Yeah, we thought it would be good. We knew that what we were looking at was superb, but we thought it would be like an audience of 4 million and an obscure audience from a Polish, obscure award from a Polish festival or something like that. We thought it'd be that level. We didn't. And it happened so completely suddenly. We've barely finished the show, and it's this enormous hit, and there seemed to be no intervening moment of escalation. It just happened.
We actually went, the sort of sense of ownership, 50 years of Doctor Who, we actually had after 90 minutes. It just went right. But in the same sort of way, I think you can't make it for anyone other than yourself. You can't, just because people get cross with the notion that Sherlock might fall in a species of love doesn't mean you can't do it. What you're talking about is that the wonderful thing is that people are engaging with the show in so many ways. They're creating their own versions, their own fictions. They're extrapolating wildly about what might happen.
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
Yes, they create fictions in which main characters do stuff with each other, don't they?
But also, it went out so quickly that we didn't really have time to get nervous about it.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, it went from being a show no one had heard of to a show that was incredibly famous overnight. And then, because there was an immediate committed fan base, it almost immediately became not as good as it used to be.
Right.
Because that is the condition.
Within the first
condition,
episode.
yeah. I think by the time they get into the taxi, they're saying, well, it's gone off since its glory days, when I really liked it. I don't think this is canonical, this bit. No. So that did happen. That was, that sort of transfer of ownership to the audience.
It's also the new model for television. Make people wait 18 months, come back for 3 weeks, and then go.
That's a great model, isn't it? Yeah. Andrew, as a kind of, not involved in the creative process, but as a performer in the show, did you think it could have turned into that kind of thing? Were you surprised that it turned into the level?
I don't think you could ever predict. I don't think you go, this is what's happening. You just couldn't predict it. I do think that. I did have a sense reading the scripts at first that it was very special. I did think that it was going to be popular, but no, absolutely no.
You had no confidence in us.
No,
you couldn't.
You couldn't bottle it, wouldn't you? You just do it again. It's just one of those things.
But do you have can you explain why? Do you have a thing of why it's kind of hit home in such a powerful way?
I think, this is going to sound like something from a greetings card, but something Mark and I were talking about. It sounds awful and sentimental, but it's love. Yeah. We love Sherlock Holmes so much. We're so obsessed with this.
It's made by fans.
Yeah, this is fan fiction. Yeah. It is an exercise in love. Yeah, we love it. We wouldn't have minded if nobody had watched it. If we'd been allowed to, we'd carried on making them for each other.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
what it is about
I
love.
still got an email from Steve right from the beginning where he just went, I've just realised that 221B is ours.
Yes.
It's true. I kind of like to print it. It was a moment of like sheer joy. Really.
The whole reason we've got 221B on that door, which makes no sense at all, you wouldn't address a door like that ever, is so that Mark and I could stand next to it and be photographed.
Right.
It's our one.
And ultimately have it.
Yes. Yeah. And then the joy of being able to walk from 221B to the next studio and into the TARDIS.
Yeah.
I remember Mark grabbing my arm and saying, "It's a map of our brains."
Yeah.
It's a Venn diagram.
Yes.
All we need now really is James Bond, isn't it? Then if you start writing...
We must leave something alone, sure.
Yeah. What are you going to say, Andrew?
I was just going to say, from the actor's point of view, I think everybody in the cast, I think, really enjoys. It's a sign of being well cast. I think slightly unusually cast. I think, and imaginatively cast people. I think there's a great mistake about casting. I think is that just because you don't look like a character, that you aren't suitable to play a character, which I think is almost always wrong. It's the essence of somebody, and I think as well as the writing and the production of the show, I think the wonderful chemistry between Benedict and Martin is so special because neither of them wants to be playing the other person's part, which can sometimes happen. You know,
Yeah.
I think Martin has been so wonderful in the show because he really loves playing that part, and the same with Benedict, and I think for all the supporting characters as well.
Yeah.
I think what makes a show really great. What makes a show really great is that the detail of the smaller characters.
Yes. Oh, I mean, Luke really, I was going to mention. Sometimes has like one or two lines in an episode and kind of...
She's wonderful, and Eunice Stubbs. And
Well, she got that. We never intended to introduce a character, especially as a regular, who was not from the original.
Right.
But having just had Lou in for those lines in A Study in Pink, she was so good we couldn't not. Another thing we should mention, by the way, just as I was watching that clip from Scandal, is the music.
Yes.
Because that music is ravishing. Actually, Michael Price is sitting right there, I think, yes. And Michael Price and David Arnold worked with that. But you know that...
and the theme tune
you don't normally hear music like that in television.
And the theme tune is one of the best theme tunes for years.
Yeah.
Fantastic theme tune. Yeah. Now you're going to have to look at yourself, though, Andrew, because we are going to show your introduction, and we're going to show the end of Series 1 and the beginning of Series 2, and I do believe that you didn't know how you're going to stitch together the one and the other, but we'll look at them first.
Yeah.
Sorry, boys! I'm so changeable. It is a weakness with me, but to be fair to myself, it is my only weakness.
You can't be allowed to continue. You just can't. I would try to convince you, but
Everything I have to say has already crossed your mind.
Probably my answers crossed yours.
Do you mind if I get that?
Oh, no, please. You've got the rest of your life.
Hello? Yes, of course it is. What do you want? Say that again! Say that again, and know that if you're lying to me, I will find you, and I will skin you. Wait. Sorry. Wrong day to die.
Did you get a better offer?
You'll be hearing from me, Sherlock. So if you have what you say you have, I will make you rich. If you don't, I'll make you into shoes.
Now, when I first saw that, the start of the second series, I thought, well, they must have all written that all in one go, filmed it in one go, but no.
That would have been a lot more convenient.
Right. You have to remember, we didn't know we were coming back.
Right.
We were just being cheeky with the cliffhanger. So, had we never come back, they'd still be in that pool sitting.
It's a very, very strange thing to go back and try and reproduce.
Very weird,
something.
absolutely.
18 months later, it was so odd.
Some of it's cropped quite tightly, isn't it, on Martin, due to his different haircut.
Oh, okay. And at what point did you come up with the Bee Gees?
We didn't. We really. I never thought it was going to be quite as big a deal. Did we? I mean, because I always thought, well, it's a standoff. They presumably just both backed away. But as the people got more and more frenetic about it, we realised we have to do something quite good now. We can't cut to 6 months later saying, well, phew, that worked out, which is, broadly speaking, our plan. So we, it was actually Sue. I think I said something about maybe his phone should ring. And then Sue said, oh, I heard a funny story about a funeral where just as the coffin was going off, someone's phone went off and it was staying alive. And I thought, oh, well, that's it.
Yeah.
So we...
We do keep doing this, though. We're doing it again now. Because obviously we'll have to go back to recreate some elements of the end of Series 2.
Now, when you did the ending of Series 2, which has got the entire world guessing what happened, did you know then how you were going to solve that?
Yes.
With Series 3, right?
We did know, yeah, because we had to set it up. Doesn't mean we won't change it, of course.
It involves a bizarre system of Japanese wrestling.
Fantastic. Excellent. Andrew, do you know how it resolves itself?
He's dead by then.
Have you signed off for Series 3, by the way?
No.
No. Anyway, have you probed them about, do you know what happens?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. You're not going to give anything else away about it? No.
Well, Sherlock survives cleverly.
Have you looked at all the theories? I mean, there's so many theories. People were tweeting, writing blogs, articles.
I was talking about this. We went to a festival in Denmark last week, and someone was asking the same thing. And it really interests me that some of them are incredibly Byzantine, which is amazing and funny and lovely that people can be so elaborate about it. But you have to understand that the program is watched at least at most once by most people, probably half of it. You can't possibly build a solution on something which can only be glimpsed if you blow up the image 65 times and they discover a continuity error. That's not how it works. And a lot of people said, obviously Andrew can't be dead because we don't see the back of his head come off. Well, that's because it was at 9:30 on BBC One. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing how
I like
many
the man on
theories there
YouTube.
are.
There's like about 5-minute PowerPoint presentation, isn't it?
It's like the Open University, that one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you made a rod for your own back by creating such a brilliant character in Moriarty and casting Andrew, doing such a brilliant job? And now we would really miss him if he didn't come back.
Yes,
you must
you
be
are
aware
going to
of
miss him
that.
because he's not going to be in it.
He's dead. Moriarty is dead.
Yes.
Now, this is the situation where Stephen...
Unless we change our mind.
Yeah, where he says that, and he also lies. So, because Stephen always lies about these things.
I
You're
lie
happy to
quite
lie.
a lot of the time. Nothing like as reliable as that.
And you've probably all as a group decided you can lie about, say that kind of thing, and then we'll all be...
It's fiction.
Yeah.
The whole thing's fiction.
What?
Benedict, he's a rubbish detective. Martin Freeman, crap doctor. The whole thing.
Yeah.
You ask Una Stubbs to clear up something up. Well, actually, that kind of works, to be honest. But,
Yeah. Okay, well, I do know, before I throw it open to the audience for questions, there's two things I want to ask. One is, have you seen the controversial American version, the new Elementary, which is their updating of Sherlock, and if so, what do you think?
No. And we've said all we can ever say about it, so let's move on from it.
Okay. And more importantly, you can tell us something about Series 3, can't you? I mean, what can you tell us about Series 3?
Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson will return.
Yes. But we can give you, well, last year we gave out 3 words, which I got wrong when I tweeted today. In fact, it was, the 3 words we gave out were Adler, Hound, and Reichenbach. So we have 3 new words, which may be misleading, which are not titles, are only teases or possibly clues, but might be deliberately designed to get you into a lather. Who knows? Shall we do our 3 words?
Gin. No. Rat.
Wedding.
Bow.
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 B-O-W.
Rat.
This is like crossword.
And that's all you're getting about Series 3.
Okay. Well, that's something.
Yeah.
Rat, wedding, and bow.
Yeah.
That's by now there will be the whole of Twitter would have exploded.
Yeah.
With those 3 words.
Yes.
I'm imagining.
I'm looking forward to doing a word
Sherlockology,
search.
the brilliant website which is devoted to your show, will have blown up probably.
That's right.
And but that's good to know.
They're
Thank
all
you.
on their phones now.
Yeah. Frantically tweeting away. When are you actually filming it, and when will it be on the screens? Can you at least tell us that? Do you
we
even
start filming in January.
know? Okay.
I don't know. I think we'll deliver sometime around August, but I can't say it beyond. Yeah.
Fine. And you're rehearsing it, Andrew, or
I can't hear you.
Yes,
Speak up, Will.
He stopped lies there inert, leaking.
Yeah. Okay. Let's throw it open to the audience for the last 10 minutes, and we've got mics, and feel free to ask anything you like. We turn the lights
The
up
record
so
of
we can see
people
you.
asking questions this festival has been shocking.
Yes.
I've been assuring my wife that this will not be the case with
I
you
can
lot.
see
So.
a gentleman there in the middle of the kind of 4 rows in the back.
Hi, my name's Connor, I'm part of the network, and I've got 2 things to ask you. The first is, I've not watched Sherlock, so I'm a new viewer.
Sorry about
this. The last thing I watched with Sherlock was the 2009 awful Robert Downey Jr. film, which I thought was awful. So I want to ask you, how can you get me excited for when I watch Sherlock for the first time on this DVD? And the second thing I ask...
Have you paid for it?
I did pay for it, yes.
Okay, good.
And the second thing I want to ask is that when would be a good time for you 5 lovely people to sign my Sherlock Series 1 DVD?
I don't think
when you're a bit more acquainted with the contents, quite frankly.
Get you excited by watching those clips.
Come on, I do want to boast. I love boasting. Every time I watch that, I just want to carry on. It's honest. Is it good? Yeah, you will like it. I promise you'll like it.
Thank you.
And where have you been?
Yeah. What were you doing?
Networking.
He's young. He's only young. These network people are young. Anyone who has seen the programme. It's something to say.
Has anyone seen it?
Yeah, lady in the front row. Well, hold on, get a mic.
There's one on the way.
Here we go.
I wanted to ask how the idea of continuing the storyline through Twitter, through the characters' Twitter accounts came along, and how much are you involved in that part, as Joel Lister is also a big part of that. So.
Well, on Twitter, I think the main one that we did do was the whip hand, didn't we, which we put out on the night of transmission. All the website and Joe Lister, we work with him all the time. He does all that. And,
There's nothing else on Twitter. The whip hand was the only one, because it's mentioned in the show, and it's actually Irene Adler's Twitter account, but anything else is not us.
Okay.
I think there's a few other whip hands that aren't ours now, but there was any.
And there's a few Sherlocks and Johns and things, but they're
that's
not
the only
bad. The
one
ones
that's-
I've seen
that's
are
ours,
pretty good. But
But there's other online presence.
yeah, we've got the online stuff, the website, and there's the John's blog.
There's John's blog.
Yeah, and science deduction and.
And who does that? Who does those?
We do all those. Joe writes a lot of them. Then we film little bits, and you did little voiceovers.
Yeah.
And I think they go to some countries, take it as well. We give them the website when they take the show with BBC Worldwide.
Cool. Gentleman there.
Jason Stone from The Drum. By yielding to the temptation to go for the most famous stories first, do you worry that you're racing through the source material a little too quickly, that that the show won't go on for as many years as it might if you hadn't?
No.
There's 56 short stories.
How do you fix that then, Steve?
56 short stories and 4 novels, and right from the beginning, our approach is the same as the Basil Rathbone, Nigel Bruce films, which is to sort of cherry-pick bits and pieces. So although some of them have the framework of the story, there's always an awful lot of new stuff. So, we're not, just because we're doing them quite quickly in that way, doesn't mean there isn't an enormous amount of stuff. And we also made a decision that everything is canonical. So the Billy Wilder version, all the Rathbones, everything can be drawn upon as a sort of Sherlock Holmes source.
Now, the other thing is what we've done at the beginning is go for the famous ones because we're still attracting attention in a way. There's a whole bunch of things in which the things that we like best in Sherlock Holmes that are not famous that are equally good. So
I'd agree with that. I mean, it's reassuring to hear that because that means you're not going to skip those, which was the reason I was asking. So you can. You feel that you've got a license to go back and do that.
You know, something like the bit where he's flogging the corpse in the morgue. It's one of the most amazing pieces of it. It's the thing that first introduces you to the idea of Sherlock Holmes, and it's hardly ever been done. So there's loads of stuff like that that's still to be mined,
and loads of other villains.
What is so exciting actually is when you ever sit with these two at a dinner or something, and they talk about the ideas, and it's just. You never stop. You go, oh, and there's that bit from that story. I mean, it's just so exciting.
I think the whole audience will find that very reassuring.
Thank you. Lady there.
Hello, my question is for Mark. You both write and star in Sherlock. I was wondering which one you prefer, whether you prefer to perform or to write it.
Neither. It's a privilege really to do the both, and it's just something I've always loved to go between the two. Really, it's handy sometimes when I can just change a line very quickly and not have to ring anybody up. No, I mean it's the same as the rest of my stuff. Really, I like doing what I'm doing at the time, and to be able to move between the two is great. Thank you.
We always slightly forget. Sorry.
Sorry, no. As I say, we're always on set when we're filming every day. I'm always there, and Mark's there, and then suddenly you think, where's Mark gone? And then you turn up in the microphone. Oh God, you're in it.
I always look forward to having my hair dyed, just to keep the grey at bay for a few more months.
Did you want to be Mycroft from the start when you first?
No, it kind of
was Steve Thompson's idea.
It was Steve, yeah. I was auditioning to play Peter Mandelson in the Mo Molam thing that Julie Walters did, and we talked from the beginning that Mycroft, like Christopher Lee in the Billy Wilder film, would be a much more Machiavellian character, like Mandelson. He really, that's his modern equivalent. And Steve Thompson, who wrote Blind Banker and Reichenbach, he suggested it. And then like Richard III refusing the crown, I said, no, I couldn't possibly. Ask me again, I couldn't possibly.
But we didn't credit you for the first episode either,
No.
did we?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Well, that's because...
Or pay him. Fantastic, yeah.
That's because, of course, all the stuff goes out well in advance, and it would have just got out, and we had this idea we could pull it off, that by explicitly saying I am his arch enemy, which is what happened. Yeah. People might think I was Moriarty.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it worked.
Except for that guy over there who's ruined the whole series for himself. He's got Sherlock, he's got Mycroft, he's got who Moriarty is.
I think IMDb and Spotlight is a permanent problem now for producers, because people go and get the part and their agents go, oh, they're playing, so go, take it off.
Yeah.
Lady there.
Kate Harwood, BBC Drama Production. I just want to ask you a bit about the international response to it, because it's fantastic in a time when we're all talking about sending shows abroad, that one of the greatest exports has been Sherlock, which is one of the most rooted in Britain you could possibly imagine. So I just want to hear, not just America, so we can kind of guess that, but from the rest of the world, what the feedback's been, how the show's gone down, and how that's been, and are you condemned to a life of going to Sherlock Comic-Cons all over the world for the rest of your careers?
They're a worse thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's worth saying, isn't it, that Sherlock Holmes is the most filmed character in all fiction. So his and Dr. Watson's international profile is already incredible. Russia and the Far East have always been obsessed with, particularly those territories. So it's, you've got an inbuilt factor there, which is great. And then our show has just taken people's imagination, which is fantastic.
I think where there's a bit of a problem now is the time between where we transmit in the UK and where people transmit in different countries. We went to New York, and I think we did a screening there. 10 people hadn't seen it. You know, everyone else had seen it. I think we went to something in France, and everyone was repeating it behind us in English.
In French?
In French. And I think, so, in America went up about 5 months later, which I think you have to try and close that gap. Because people are just getting hold of the copies somewhere, you know.
But yes, to answer your main question, we do just swan around different countries as far as possible.
We were invited... Oh, I better not say that.
No.
Oh, we were invited somewhere strange, that's all I mean.
Oh. The lady in the front row.
It's a lovely anecdote.
Sorry, it's funny because the lady just basically asked my question, the one that I wanted to ask you. But I'm Italian, so sorry for my English. And I'm here because it has been a huge success in Italy too, and lots of Italian fans watching it in the original language, you know, buy the original DVDs and so on. But it's true, it's a very British product. So what I wanted to ask you is, did you have any idea this would come to be? You said before it's been a surprise, yes, but I mean, one thing is to have success in UK, another one to be worldwide, well known.
You'd be insane if you weren't surprised by this. Of course, we had no idea that it would be an international success on this scale. No, none. We couldn't have. We could have done 3 perfectly good 90-minute movies and disappeared. So it's a shock to us. I suppose, looking back on it, in retrospect, you can say, well, dare I say it, we did a good job on the most popular character in fiction, therefore there's a real chance. And it's possibly the most recognizable brand there's ever been at Sherlock Holmes. But no, you couldn't have known.
I think also because we had the pilot actually helped to sell, because you could say, this is what it's going to be like.
And of course, we'd love to have you all in a convention in Italy, Warman's and a convention in Italy, so whenever you're free. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's another one.
Yeah, result.
That Rome set episode.
Yes. Let's go to the back.
Yeah, sorry to change the subject. I know that Mark and Stephen write Doctor Who, and I was wondering if for the...
Richard Bacon, I'm not telling you, Richard!
I was wondering if for the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who...
Out, Richard, out!
You would consider doing a multi-Doctor episode.
Because you've asked too many times. Right? In fact, there's going to be no Doctor in it at all. I'll show
the question.
Right?
Richard, you're not hosting this panel. Just shut up. Thanks, Richard.
There's a Q&A tomorrow about Doctor Who. Please don't come.
Let's have a genuine question. Yeah, please don't come. Not allowed. There we are. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rob. I'm on the network, but I have seen the show, so some of us have, don't worry.
Good.
With such long gaps between the seasons, are you worried that by the 3rd season, you keep it up to date with Twitter, like technology and things like that, that even that might become dated by the time you carry on? Trying to keep it, like things like Instagram have now taken off, and you're not going to know in a year's time what the world's going to look like in a way. Is that something you think about?
I think it's like, I mean, we've always said, when people were slightly worried about the idea of Sherlock using a phone and the internet and stuff like that, it's because the original character is absolutely at the cutting edge of his own technology. He's a modern man. He doesn't not use a telephone because he doesn't like it. As soon as there is a telephone, there's one in Baker Street. His version of sending cables and telegrams is texting. I don't think we can worry about that. I suppose you just have to make sure you don't enshrine something which then in 5 years' time looks bizarre and old-fashioned. But I think we're going to have these kind of phones for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a problem.
Thank you. And perhaps one more from the gentleman there who's had his hand up for a while.
Hi, it's a question for Stephen mainly. There's a lot of blogs online about Doctor Who, particularly I like Adventures with the Wife in Space, who send their love. But is there anything like that around for Sherlock, and does it annoy you when fans particularly criticise the show you've worked on?
I am annoyed by any form of criticism. I disapprove of it. I know people say that they're entitled to their opinion. Why? I don't know. I think there's a lot of stuff out there. Believe it or not, I try not to look. I know the Wife in Space. blog talking about with Doctor Who, and that's lovely, but that's about the old series, so I can read that safely without anyone trying to burn me in effigy or anything. But so I try and avoid a lot of the online stuff. I think you do too.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's not. You just got to think it's. If you didn't know it was there, you would just carry on, and it's really the equivalent of listening at doors. Don't listen at doors if you don't want to hear something bad about yourself. Yeah. Stay inside.
We do get sent some fantastic things, though, pictures and bits around the world.
People are
just send a nice bit.
It's not all negative. It's
What's
just
the best thing you've been sent, Andrew, from that?
I got sent the other week a thing called Moriarty, which is a homemade tea bag. And it says that's what people drink. But it was beautifully done. I'm constantly amazed at the really creative things that people do. But I think that's really true. I think you've got to listen to what people have to say, but go on and do what you're going to do anyway. Ignore it. And
you are eavesdropping if you go in on a forum, and you are going to hear them say terrible, terrible things about it.
Quite.
But I think it's like reviews. You have to believe bad reviews if you believe good ones. It's still just someone's opinion. And if you go on something and they go, oh God, this is amazing, you almost mentally search out the one that's going to slag it off. It's like a strange self-destructive mechanism.
Yeah, you all only remember the bad review, don't you?
Yeah. I've scanned down the page to see anything negative. Not quite as good as last week. What do you mean?
Well, I think that is all we've got time for, sorry, but I'd just like to say thank you to the panel. And also it's going to sound crawly, but it is an incredibly thrilling thing for us viewers to watch. And I hope you're all aware that we kind of love it, and it's become an incredibly cherished thing. Thank you for coming, and thank you all as well.
Thank you.